I was talking with Peter V. Hill, and Peter said, you know what, Fritz, now that you've mapped out the town of Acequias, and now that you're starting to run water into Kit Carson Park, why don't we take a look at the Vigili Romo Acequia? And I said, what? And he said, yes, it's an old ditch. And we're going to get into some of that history. But let me back up a little bit here and forgive my, let's see, this is down. We're going to start right at the top. And feel free to interrupt with questions. This is a map. It's great to talk about a defined area like the Cornelio Basin or Kit Carson Park, but we have to understand the whole watershed if you're going to be an effective planter and land manager and so on. So to the right is the upper reach, as it's labeled there, of the Rio Fernando de Taos River. And at the top area, if I'm pointing this is the La Jara headwater, and down here is Tienditas. To find La Jara, if you go up Taos Canyon, and you know that pretty intense hairpin turn that takes you over the ridge and down into Eagle Nest, which is down in this area over here. If you, instead of taking that hairpin turn to get to Eagle Nest, if you just turn left, there's a beautiful little old dirt road that travels along the La Jara headwaters and goes back quite a few miles. It's a beautiful area, great for animals, great for walkers, great for cross-country skiers when we have snow. And this is our headwater. The Tienditas Creek is the other headwater. Both feed into the Rio Fernando. Right as I think about La Jara right now, I'm going to mention to you that I've been up there during the summer months when it's absolutely inundated with tourists. They leave their stuff behind. And so whenever you're up there, if you could just pick up an extra handful of garbage, that'd be great. And that makes me think of one of the many initiatives we have going along the whole watershed, and that is what I affectionately call our pet waste and parking lot pickup patrol. Over here behind Francis, there's a volunteer list. If you'd like me to call you to tell you more about some of the initiatives I'm going to talk about, be happy to do so. But we have a small group of volunteers, and what we do is every Monday or thereabouts, doesn't have to be locked in with a hard calendar, we go up and we empty the 3 pet waste stations, I'm sorry, it's over here, in El Nogal, and the, what's the walk on the other side? That's, yes, the Divisadero area. We have 2 pet waste stations where we empty the containers there, and they're very, you won't have to get your hands dirty. These garbage bags sit in the container. We take them out. Folks bring them to my house. I dispose of them either at Taos Herb Company, who's volunteered to let us use their dumpster, or to the Forest Service. To get into the Forest Service is a bit of a jump because you got to get through lock gates and stuff. Oftentimes just easier for folks to drop it off at my place near this building, near Kit Carson. I take it over to Taos Herb, and then they take it, and then their guys, the waste management picks it up on a weekly basis. But in any event, so as you walk out the door, you'll see this little question, are you interested in? And one of those areas is pet waste and parking lot pickup. After the current administration got done laying many of our support staff for the Forest Service, our parks are in serious shape, and they need us citizens to step it up. And so we are doing that by collecting the pet waste that's in a self-contained container, so you don't have to worry about that. We replace the baggies, and then we pick up the parking lot, and then we do PR. We talk to the folks that are there, if they're interested, about joining us and about packing it in and packing it out and that kind of thing. So that's pet waste pickup. Another group that I belong to and that I'm inviting you to join is the Rio Fernando de Taos Collaborative. The collaborative is focusing And I might mention the town is a founding member of a lot of this stuff. Not only the weed board, as we call it, which gets everybody excited, but we're talking about invasive and noxious weeds and not the weed that you would smoke. So pet waste pickup is one volunteer effort, and that's totally voluntary. However, I do report to the Forest Service because they need to know that their campgrounds are being cared for. The next group is the Rio Fernando de Taos Collaborative. And the mission of the collaborative is to improve the quantity and quality of water coming down the Rio Fernando. I've been told that the Rio Fernando used to run 12 months a year. You could inner tube, you could fish in it. It was a vibrant flowing river. But with urbanization, folks building too close to the river, other folks illegally maybe ponding upstream, and other environmental insults, the river has become included. And we're going to talk about that in a minute here. But suffice it to say, if you're interested in the Rio Fernando de Taos Collaborative, there's a little sign-up sheet there, and I will call you and let you know when our next meeting is. It is a volunteer group, but with the collaboration of the Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, the town, the county, a whole bunch of other groups. But really, we need citizens there. Right now, in that whole collaborative, there's just 2 citizens at these meetings, me and old Mark Henderson. I'm sure some of you know Mark, an archaeologist here in town. And by the way, he's caring for his wife, Yolanda, up in Denver. Yolanda's been pretty sick, but she's on the recovery path now. So if you know Mark and Yolanda, you'll know why they're not here tonight. He planned on being here, but couldn't be. And you will, and I can convey a message to Mark if you don't have a contact. So we have the Tienditas and La Jara, absolutely gorgeous headwater coming downstream into the Rio Fernando. And right here is about where the Sirius Mountain Range and the watershed, this whole area is the Rio Fernando watershed ends. And then right there is the mouth of Taos Canyon. So pretty big watershed, not as robust as the Rio Pueblo, but very meaningful. And if the collaborative and the rest of us volunteers are successful, we will help to improve the quantity and quality of water coming down the river. At this point right here, we have what geologists call a, let's see, well, we'll just call it the intermittent lower reach. This is where the river dries out, right in this area here. There's a couple reasons for that. First of all, there are 7 acequias from this point all the way down to here. So they're taking a little bit of water out of the river. Then some of the elders tell us that there's some subterranean faults that are actually sucking the water down and into the subterranean environment. Now, during times of good runoff, this river, this whole area is full of water. But during times of low runoff, like we're experiencing now with our long-term drought, the river will dry up. At this point here, and just to give you an idea, this would be about Salazar Road, right about there. And it's just past this point here that you have the Taos Land Trust, where there are active springs. And that's why we have a gaining area in this lower portion of the river. So this gives you an idea of the length and breadth of the watershed, and it begins to explain some of the dryness that we experience here in town. Acequia involvement, which we all support, and the acequias do percolate the water, and it will get back into the river, just very slowly, not robustly. So that's a good thing. And then perhaps this subterranean vault. The latest hydrological study that we had done indicates that the hydrologist feels the dryness in there is due to unsaturated soils, dry soils. And when the river finally gets to those areas, the soils just soak it all up. So this kind of gives you an idea of the watershed. And now if I can outsmart technology. Okay, so this map is, this is the mouth of the canyon right here, and this is the losing area. That's the geological term. When you have a losing river, it means that the river's not flowing. It's all going underground, and you end up with a dry riverbed, or what looks like a dry riverbed. Frequently, there's water underneath that, but on the surface, it looks dry. So this is our losing or dry area, and we have 7 acequias coming off right at the mouth of the canyon, Cañón del Sur and the Randall Reservoir, right in that area. I'm sorry, I've got tremors, so if you're hoping for a steady red light, I'll do my best. Then we have Cañón del Norte going to the north and west, which merges with the Acequia Madre del Rio Pueblo. That's the one that feeds our park. They merge right here up at Don Francisco Road, Takayama Road. There's a confluence. So Norte merges with Madre, and it comes down to Angladas, and this is the river where the dots are. It comes down to Angladas, now Taos, Cal, and it goes into the river, and then there's a head gate on the other side of this river, which is part of the Acequia Madre's system, and that drains water out of the river. So before we've even gotten down to Salazar, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 acequias taking water out of the river. Not necessarily a bad thing, but we all need to learn how to work together. And the Vigil y Romo is down on the Salazar Road and the Rio Fernando right there. So this would be about Salazar. Now, when they built Salazar Road, this was a town road, they needed to make it level. And our old diversion for the Vigil was right under that bridge. In order to create a level roadway, they had to destroy the diversion for the Vigil y Romo. This is what I learned not a decade ago or so. And so the ditch was considered non-usable because of that. And we lost our point of diversion, and it was considered, to call it an abandoned ditch is a technical legal term. It was never declared abandoned by the Office of the State Engineer, but it was not a functioning acequia. So back in about 2016, during the Baroni administration, when I was in office, we obtained the funding and the engineering to move the point of diversion upstream a little bit and then culvert it under Salazar. And if you look hard to the, if you're going to the north on Salazar and you look hard to the left, you'll see the Vigil ditch running off in the distance. So we solved the problem by culverting under the road, and then it became an issue of revitalizing and finding that ditch again, because it had been covered up. 50, 60 years worth of soil covers the ditch up, and all you see is a small depression, maybe a tree line that can act as an indicator as to where an acequia was. So, but back to the drying area here. So we on the Vigil, along with our sister ditches, the J.V. Martinez ditch and further down the Alamitos ditch, are in conversation, if you will, with our sister ditches to the east to see if we can't figure out some way to begin to address this drying stretch. And we've been 6 years in negotiations, if you want to call them that, or 6 years in conversation, if you want to call it that. And as you know, the law of the West is whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. So this is an issue that we continue to pursue. Our sister ditches to the east basically feel like we're the Johnny-come-latelys. We are the youngest ditch in northern New Mexico. 1897 is our origin date. But we work with our sister ditches. We want them to succeed. We want to see water in our river 12 months a year somehow, and we've have crafted some simple solutions that can help to address that. And so think of Salazar Road right here, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to hold on with two hands. Here's Salazar, here's the river, there's our ditch. And then our two sister ditches to the west, the JVM or JV Martinez, and then further on down Alamitos. So this is a big community-wide effort to deal with the drought and sustaining our historical cultural traditions and making sure that everyone along the river and along our ditch system has the water. And in New Mexico water law, that is the foundation of all water law, that all parciantes, all people have a right to the water. And during times of shortage like we're experiencing now, then everyone gets much less, but everyone gets something. And that is the foundation of all Office of the State Engineer water law here in our state. So we have many other issues on the Rio Fernando, particularly in this drying area, but we'll get through them. It's going to take time. It took 40 years to craft the Abeta Water Adjudication Accord with Taos Pueblo. We've only been at this 6 years. So give us time, we'll get there. But my point is not to disparage our sister ditches. We're all in this together, and we will figure out, we need to take care of the big ag producers to the east, and we need to take care of the lower ag producers to the west, and we'll figure it out. So let me move on here, because I could go on for hours on each one of these, and I don't want to put you to sleep. And so again, to get you oriented, this is where Bob started us off. Here is Salazar. Here's La Posta, sort of, kind of, whoops. Oh, what did I do? Yeah, okay. And let me go this way. I think I enlarged it somehow. Okay, and this is La Posta Road. Salazar's down here now. Here's La Posta, that nasty, awful turn there, and here's the Land Trust pull-in. Land Trust offices, your offices for native plants. Bob did a great job pointing it out. It's somewhere in here. And then this is the watershed. In dark green, coming down, Fred Baca. And now what I think one of the things Bob wanted me to show you was, if you go to Fred Baca and you take this circular walk, and you take the bird sanctuary walk that goes back in through here and comes out there. If you go to the very end of that, just before you reach the big square wooden area where you can sit down and look at the birds, just before you reach that, be looking on your left and you'll see a little footpath. It's not marked. Watch your step. I've never seen any dangerous snakes in there. We have some nice sized bull snakes, but no rattlers, nothing like that. Take my dogs there all the time. Please take your dogs there. It'll help us deal with the prairie dogs, right? Confidentially, though we have a leash law here in town, I let my dogs off leash because in this area, the whole Cornelio Basin, they can run and romp. The neighbors love it, and they're not going to get in trouble. It's kind of a naturally confined area. So that trail, you can kind of see part of it. This is actually a fence line, but that trail comes out here and will drop you right into the Cornelio Basin. Oh, shoot. Okay. Right into the basin. And, oops, I did it again, Taylor. I turned it blue. We'll talk a little bit more about these invasives, but this is the area we are talking about. Calle Cornelio, named after Cornelio Vigil, the farming family that owned this property and much of the property in Taos. You could argue that the Vigils, that Taos should not be named Taos at all. It should be named Vigil because they were the primary property owners a couple hundred years ago. Over time, families change, lands get sold off. The last farmer in this area was Eduardo Vigil, and he passed on in the 50s, early 60s. but he had an orchard, the remnants of the apple trees still there, and he farmed this area and had a working operation. Stories are that he could sit back and watch this whole area being irrigated, and he'd put his six-pack in the ditch and let it cool off and have a little chair there, and he'd just watch the magic happen. Eduardo Vigil. Now, there's other interesting things about that, but I better I just like to honor the Vigils and Eduardo in particular, who was the last farmer for this 25 acres, and we'll get into sectioning it off so it makes more sense to you. But let's keep going here. Oh, Taylor, this is an old picture of the basin of what it used to look like. So again, this is Calle Cornelio. So let me orient you here. The Herdner Road off of Salazar, stop sign, go west on Herdner to Calle Cornelio. Turn right on the very first road. That's Calle Cornelio, named after Cornelio Vigil, the patron of the Vigil family, going back hundreds of years. And as you drive down Calle Cornelio, it will take you right to a dead end, and then you're in the heart of the basin right here. You can turn right and go up Wilton. But, you know, Bob wanted photos of when this was a junkyard. After Eduardo passed, it was a vacant field. People just started dumping their stuff in there. And then Ken Blair bought the property and didn't really do anything with it, but he did buy it with water rights. And the town, interestingly enough, owned property to the west of the sagebrush, and they had water rights. So the town did a switch and said, Ken, how about if we give you our sagebrush property and we take the basin? And Ken thought, great, adjacent to my establishment, the sagebrush, water rights. Town thought, great, we get this nice bit of property in to the town municipality and so on. So it was a very simpatico deal. But so I didn't have any pictures of the refrigerators and swing sets and tires and beer bottles that we pulled out of there. But here's a little bit of a remnant of something. But you see how dry and desolate this is looking. Absolutely tragic. This was once farmed land. This was productive property. And so this is, and this is what it used to look like. Now we're going to keep going, I think here, Bob, but I can't stop. So, oh, good. So as you come off Herdner, let's see if the map goes that far. It doesn't. But right over here is Salazar. Actually, right there is Salazar. This would be Herdner. You turn right on Calle Cornelio and follow the road, the dirt road down, and suddenly there's a huge 25 acres, and I'm hoping that it will knock your socks off. I encourage you to visit. If you don't know how to get there, I can give you my phone number. James or I can get you down there so you can see this hidden emerald that is coming back to life. So let's look again at that desolate. When I got down there, I was bummed because Peter had told me about this. I started to think about it. I talked to Dan Baroni, talked to Rick Bellis, talked to my fellow counselors. Anyway, I got very interested in rehabbing this place, but it was an absolute depressing thing to look at. Just awful. Car parts. We even had mud boggers go down there to mud bog on that property, and we actually had to tow them out. They got so stuck in the mud. As we were working the property, we found an old metate, and the fellow I was working with, his girlfriend, lived out at Taos Pueblo. She called her auntie. Auntie came out. We looked at this beautiful ancient artifact, and then I asked Auntie, we need to take care of this. We want to leave it here in the basin. This could become the heart of the basin. And I said, so what would you recommend? And she said, well, we should say some prayers and rebury it. So I said, that's what we should do then. Do your prayers and rebury it. And we're all going to leave. And you cannot tell anyone where this artifact is buried. We know it's out there somewhere, but none of us knows where, and we don't want to know where, because my friends out at the village told me, well, Fritz, 1,000 years ago, we used to, in the fall, go down the Rio Pueblo hunting and gathering. And then when we hit the confluence of the Rio Fernando, we'd come up the Rio Fernando, and we would camp here in the basin. And then from there, we'd head up to what's now Angladas, and then from there back to the village. Now, of course, there's all the happenings at Fort Bergwin and so on and so forth. Can't get lost on that for the moment, but that's a great history. But there's your taxpayer-funded Cornelio Basin coming back to life. And this is the moonscape that it once was, because it has changed, as you will see now. So now this is the southwest corner of the basin, and we'll get into the quadrants here in a minute. This was as close to getting garbage, which Mr. Picorni had asked me to show you. This is the southwest corner, and a little bit of garbage left there, but look at the moonscape. Look at the invasive species that are happening. This is actually white top or hoary cress back in here, just isn't blossoming. This big structure, you would think, oh, what a great berm. That'll hold all kinds of water back. This is a floodplain. This berm carries, has within it a giant culvert that comes from Albertsons all the way down and around Salazar, comes around and into the basin and curves over and dumps road waste, road water into the Rio Fernando down here. One of the projects I'd like to do, and I know I'm hitting you guys with a lot of projects, but I would like us to put in some green infrastructure down at the exit of that pipe. I think we would be doing a lot of things, but the main thing is helping that water through the green infrastructure project to filter before it goes into the river. So that would be a very fun, very meaningful project, and I'll drop it on your doorstep. James and I have it on our to-do list, and it will get done, but it's not going to get done tonight, but maybe with your help tomorrow. So that's what this giant berm is. Now, you would think because this is a floodplain, this would hold back gobs and gobs of water. Well, it doesn't. Because if you look carefully, right there, you'll see a prairie dog. We just got done mitigating prairie dogs. There's another prairie dog hole, another. All along this road are prairie dog holes, and the prairie dogs take the water out of the basin into the town's maintenance road, that's this side of the berm, and then under that huge berm. And we have actually flooded out that guy's house with prairie dog water when we were flooding, just learning how the basin worked. Remember, everybody that knew how this used to work was dead. So we've had to learn by trial and error. And that's a big part of tonight's story. And you're going to see that. But this is kind of what it looked like about 10 years ago. So I better keep going here. This trail here is the town's maintenance road that goes all the way back in there and then around to the northern end of the basin. And the reason the town has a maintenance road there is to keep an eye on that giant culvert coming from Albertsons. Okay, this is the northeast corner quadrant, and you'll see all these flags. This was the excavation work that we had to do. The ditch was all covered up. We had to use Mr. Henderson's help to help us figure out where the ditch was. But the point behind this photo is to show you just how barren and nasty this property was. And I will keep going here, because I need to get into the plans. This is a photo of when we first started bringing water down into the basin. This is the land trust over here. Here's the northeast corner of the basin, and it had never been irrigated before. So you can see prairie dog holes all over the place. Invasive species, particularly bindweed, up in this area. I'm going to keep going. Okay, so we had the dream, and we knew we had to move the culvert. And so the town and along with grant writing and other initiatives with the Interstate Stream Commission, we got the money to build this compuerta and this weir. Now, this photo was taken back in, I want to say 19, and that was a great water year. We actually got a foot or more of water over the weir. We had German brownies, brown trout, coming upstream. They were going down our culvert. They were going all the way out to the basin. Last summer, I pulled out at the end of the basin, right where you saw that nasty log in the moonscape, a foot-long trout. I've got pictures if you don't believe me, and another 10-incher the next day. So the fish will follow this living, breathing water. This is a better picture of that culvert. You can see the quality of water. You can see the weir. We get transients camping out under here when the water's starting to come down. We got to get under there and let them know you got to move on. We picked up needles, all the stuff that modern society deals with, we have as new age meets old age and so on. So I'll keep going here. I really want you to be seeing the plans. Okay, this is, let's see if I can get that over. Affectionately known as the Height Cut Bank. This is Marcia Cunningham's old house here on the left. See how close it is to the ditch? Town ordinances, which we revised back in the day, back when I was in office, would no longer allow this to happen. It's way, way, way too close. But it's there. Matt and Kelsey Height, First New Mexico Title, own it now. Great friends, great vecinos on the ditch. We're in constant communication with them. But what I wanted you to see was this cut bank and show you. So this is the Rio Fernando on the right, our Vigili Romo on the left. The guy that used to own this property off to the right decided he wanted to have a bigger lawn. This is back in the 50s. So he went and got himself a bulldozer, and he just moved his front yard all the way up to, and then moved the river all the way over to this side so that he could have a nice spacious lawn. And indeed, it is beautiful. But it was an illegal act, no longer allowed by the Office of the State Engineer or the Interstate Stream Commission. And because he moved his lawn over, he changed the river, and he forced the creation of this cut bank. This cut bank was undercutting our ditch, and we had water seeping out here. This whole thing was going to cave in, right? So as a temporary fix, we did this rock structure and 2x6 structure along with a 50 ml pond liner to buy us time so that we could write the grants to get the money to finish what we call the Height Cut Bank, which we just finished 3 months ago. $160,000 project. Okay. So the Height Cut Bank, and I just love that rock work. Okay. So now this is the Vigili Romo. This is actually the Taos Land Trust off to the left. Look at how nasty that looked. Nothing there. This is the ditch, which Student Help, Youth Conservation Corps, Rocky Mountain, Sweat Labor, Parciantes who'd never been Parciantes before, a commission who'd never been commissioners before. They didn't know anything about it. We've had to train each other. And so this is slow excavation work, finding the old ditch and bringing it on down. Here's one of our students. This is about, I'm going to say 8 years ago or so. And you can see, and one of the reasons we knew we were on the right path was as we were digging, we ran into these concrete structures. We thought, what the heck? What's that all about? We didn't know. These were actually built in the 30s to help divert water. We're diverting it this way, and as you'll see in just a minute, diverting it that way. But we had no idea what those were. And thanks to Mark Henderson and others, we've slowly figured it out. As you can see, here's some of Mark's tools. He also had us digging for artifacts, right? And showing them to him because these become now archaeologically important. Moving on. Darn, I talk too much. Here's another picture. And this is James, this is Brandon. Remember when we were trying to find Bert, and I said, well, Brandon, well, no, he lives, and he, right, and he lives adjacent to that. But here we are with the students studying. Now look at, we have kind of the beginnings of a ditch right here. Look at, this is where the ditch actually goes. And look at how filled in that is. That's what we were dealing with. So we looked for signs, tree lines, stonework, anything that would indicate an old acequia. So as you'll see here in a minute, okay, here are the lads. Here's more of that stonework. The ditch is going off this way underneath, I think that's Brandon, and going down this way. Let's keep going. Got to get into the plans. That's what you guys paid the money to see. More stonework here. I just want to pay credit to our youth. You know, if asked, they will be there. And they love this kind of stuff. And yes, we need to take breaks and hydrate and so on. But if it weren't for guys like this from all over our community, this project would not have happened. So kudos to our youth. Keep coming further down. Here we are. Now this is after getting the ditch at the elevation we wanted, the width that we wanted. Notice the sides, they're not perpendicular, they're curved. Running water likes curvature, not linearness. So when you're digging your ditch, you want to create a bowl-like structure. The different flags stand for different things, but look how proud these fellows are. You know, job well done. And couldn't do it without our youth. So whenever we have a chance, we need to incorporate the youth. Talking to a school group or bringing schools out. I've had many a school group out here working on the ditch. So this is Taos Land Trust. Your structure is off over in the distance here. Look at how beautiful that's looking. Look at how our ditch is starting to take shape. And look at the water starting to come down. Now this is east and this is west. Here's our stone structure. Gotta keep going. I apologize, you guys. I should have it more together, but I'm just a ditch digger. Okay, so here's the land trust, that green area. Remember the cement area, that's off to the right now. And this is traveling in an east-west direction between the Taos Land Trust and our Perciante. It used to be Teresa Lopez. She sold her property to Mateo and Laura Clark. This now is their property. They're very much involved in revitalizing their property, which hadn't been farmed in ages. So here comes the ditch, and then it comes straight across like that. Look at how beautiful. This was not here 8 years ago. And this was Eduardo's main lines. Let's keep going. So now we're bringing the water for the first time down into the basin. Look at that terrain. Look at that. Look at what's growing there. It's awful. And here comes our ditch. Now here's my grandson pointing out to me, we've got a serious breach. And this is right at the beginning of the basin. Let's keep moving. And here he is working on the breach and probably pretty disgusted with me. He's a senior at Taos High now, graduating. Okay, there's our fix. And this is the northeast quadrant, James, zone 1. So you can see, right. Now we're heading in a southerly direction past that big thicket of willows. There's Jordan's Repair, heading way down to that moonscape where you saw that big log early on. And now this sacred juniper tree, the hermanos, the penitente, there's an old morada that we discovered. It is up between that house and that house. You've seen it, you just didn't know it. It's going back to the earth. It's falling down. It's no longer active. Billy Vigil, yes, one of Eduardo's grandchildren, great-grandchildren, Billy Vigil, paid out of his own pocket to re-roof that morada because he'd like it to be acknowledged and he wants to protect what's left. So there's an old morada right up between those two houses. The hermanos, the penitentes, on their knees during Holy Week would go from way over there, it's at least 100 yards away, over to this juniper tree. And then on their knees, back. So not only did Puebloans use this, for hunting and gathering and camping. But now we have our hermanos and that rich tradition honoring this area. There's something going on in this basin. It has called to me, and it will call to you when you're down there. But and every time I drive by, and I even taught James this, I think on our first day of orientation, we just put a little hand on that juniper, that old juniper, and it's old. And it's found water despite the fact that it hasn't been irrigated. I know I'm out of time, but I just wanted to share that story of the juniper tree, because you'll see it when you go down there and you'll go, oh, that's the juniper. That's where the hermanos used to go on their knees from way over there to over here and back. Anyway, so there's our ditch, probably the first time we've had water down there. And let's keep going. Okay, so here we are in irrigating in this would be zone 2, James, getting water down there. Nothing planted yet. We had to understand how the water worked. And now, here's that big berm that I was telling you about where we flooded out that guy's house. Here's water coming down for the first time. Look at that moonscape. Think of what the earth was telling us when we got water on it. And think what the prairie dogs are telling us. They were not happy. Okay, now this is what you paid the big money for. Over the years, we have learned a lot about this system. First of all, the mother ditch coming right down here was all covered up and built on. We had to establish that. But in the meantime, we used the alternate mother ditch. That's the one where the big cement blocks were. And we bring the water down into the northeast corner. And all these arrows here indicate little head gates. Now, let's be honest. They're not fancy, nice, pull it up, drop it down. Pieces of plywood. Your garbage became my stuff to use in the ditch. Old pieces of metal thrown out and discarded from the days when it was a junkyard suddenly became points of diversion. We got very creative. And so we have the alternate mother ditch coming down here, and it curls around and it merges with the original mother ditch. Then they merge into one and they come all the way down into zone 3. This is zone 1. This has been an area of intense focus. In this area, we have rye, wheat, and primarily rye and wheat planted. The purple area are maps of the water dispersal. So you can see I'm only getting maybe 50% of zone 1 irrigated. This is learning about how to run this system. And then we move into zone 2. Now, we haven't planted anything in zone 2 because it's been so full of prairie dogs. We just got done mitigating those prairie dogs last week. And yes, we use carbon monoxide. We tried to get them out with dogs, tried to get them out with, you name it, tried everything. Finally, we had to gas them with carbon monoxide. So the benefit, I know that may be offensive, and I hate killing the little creatures, but they were killing us. So that's what we had to do, because this area was nothing but one giant prairie dog town. So we plugged the holes, we gassed them with carbon monoxide, the dogs fall asleep in their holes, and they die a peaceful death, as opposed to the poisons or bubble gum or anything like that, you know. So this is zone 2. This is zone 3. And a little bit better irrigation happening here. Up here in zone 4, an area of particular interest to you all, we've got vega grass growing in this whole area, which indicates a high water table. And so we have not tried to irrigate it because it's got a pretty high water table. Plus, we have the calliope or calliope hummingbird, smallest hummingbird in North America, comes up from Mexico City, living right there, right up there. So we've tried not to disturb that area. Zone 5 is this whole area. Again, very high water table. Interestingly enough, no prairie dogs because the water table is so high. So this is telling us down here, we've got a very low water table. Now, the neighbors in the neighborhood tell me that when we irrigate this property, their wells all through here go up an average of 10 feet very quickly. It's a quick recharge. So there's something subterraneanly happening. You know, everything slopes towards the gorge. So this is sloping towards the gorge, but they're uphill. So there's got to be some kind of underground, subterranean, something or other that's forcing the water uphill, it seems. Let's move on. So this is water irrigation in the current state. These are the tasks. So we want to improve our watering system. And I'm not going to spend any more time on this, just to reiterate: Zone 1, northeast; Zone 2, southeast; Zone 3, southwest; Zone 4, northwest; Zone 5. And that little trail that connects you to Fred Baca, might be able to see it here. Achama. So here's the Rio Fernando, and that little trail is right in this area here. So there's your bird sanctuary. Look out and come right across. Just go to the bird sanctuary. Before you get it, just be looking on your left for that little trail. It's very subtle. Your dog will know where it is because he'll want to go there. Oh, okay. Now, this is what you paid the big money for. These are the invasives. These are the invasives, and we have treatment plans for all of them, but this is Scotch thistle. This area here and this giant area here are bindweed. This is hoary cress. Here's some more Scotch. And then this is a mixture of Canada thistle and Scotch. We also have a little bit of Russian knapweed and some other invasives. This is where I need your help. Plant identification. We know the big cool stuff like Scotch thistle, but we need your adept eyes to help train James and I as to some of the other subtler things, because as I have learned, and remember, I'm just a ditch digger, I'm just learning about this stuff. What I have learned is that when you have a big crop like this, you don't try and mitigate that right off the bat. You get the satellite crops, the satellite invasives that are moving out, because they're the spreaders. So what I've learned from County Extension is deal with the satellites first and start working your way back to Central City, where everything is. But this is our weed mitigation plan. We've got a pretty good plan. And now with the bill grant, hopefully we can take this to the next level. And this bill grant that Bob mentioned to you at the beginning is where we need your help. We're going to have a contractor out there, hopefully, if there's any left at this time of the year. It's so late. But hopefully we'll get someone out there to work with James and I, and then having folks like you down there on the property sharing with us your knowledge and expertise. That's what we need. And then we need to put you together with the contractor, with the students, with me and James, to form an interesting little collaborative unit. No have-tos here. This is the dream, if we're going to continue to get back to what Eduardo had. And so this is what you're paying the big money for here tonight. This is our invasive weed mitigation plan. And we've got it delineated, as you can see up here. And each invasive takes a different treatment. As you know, Scotch is not too difficult to deal with, but Canada thistle is. Scotch thistle, not too difficult, but Canada is. And bindweed is. And hoary cress is, because they're root spreaders. What are they? What's the fancy name? Rhizomal spreaders, is that what it's called? See, that gives you an idea of how aware I am. I'm really just a student, but have the heart and drive, as does James. We're both students, so we have a lot to learn, and that's why I'm here. So that's the invasive mitigation plan. This area here is focused just on, we have a lot of hand mitigation. Here's just a fabulous shot of all kinds of Scotch. There's Canada thistle in there. This would be a hand mitigation area. We can get a tractor in there as long as our mowing is consistent. But because there's Canada thistle in here, we really do have to hand mitigate. Not the whole area, just certain areas. But this gives you an idea, after I irrigate, what this looks like after irrigation. So you might say, well, stop irrigating, and no, the Scotch will come back, and it does every year. And we've made progress. It used to be a lot worse. But this is the kind of territory you're looking at. So you don't want to, you want to come in your knee-high boots and good jeans and such. So we had some pretty good results by plowing, but you obviously don't want to plow a white top or hoary cress. So we can mow that, and we might be able to get sheep in there if it's going to pull out the roots and all. But that is how hoary cress spreads. Not through, somewhat through its blossoms, I'm sure, but mostly through its roots, its rhizomal structure. So that's an area of, because this little area here and our Scotch thistle that was all up in here, we are feeding the whole community these invasives. It's coming from the Cornelio Basin. We have Scotch that's gone from here all the way up to the Taos Library. Next time you're at the library and you see the Scotch up there, you know who gave it to you, the Cornelio Basin. We've got hoary cress going all behind the old Piggly Wiggly, the Super Save, I think is what it's called now. And so all that hoary cress, right there, that's the mother lode. So we got issues, but they're manageable. We're making progress. That's the good news. And so with constant irrigation, we've done 3 or 4 cover crop plantings. And before I go there, 3 or 4 cover crop plantings, primarily rye, wheat, and hairy vetch. Our land has been so deprived of nutrients and baked by the sun for longer than a half a century with no water on it, just junk, that our main goal is to get nutrients back in the soil, nitrogen fixers. Now, I know a little bit about nitrogen fixers, but I'll bet you guys know a whole lot more than I do. That's why we need your help. We need your brains, not necessarily your brawn, your brains. So, working on the irrigation system, now that you've heard the tragedy, this is zone 1. This is what it looked like last year. So, northeast quadrant, zone 1 goes from here down to about there and across to that elm tree and then up the midline ditch. And look at this beautiful system. Here's a ditch going right along, and we have got cover crops all in this area. Here's Veneta number 2. All these things have labels. They're all mapped. I mean, it's just fantastic. This is the main lateral going into Veneta 3, which was an experiment. This is a real high point. High elevation is what I mean. And then here is lateral 4 that goes clear across the basin. All of this zone, you can see, has been planted. All of it, even up in there with rye and wheat. And James and I were just out there this afternoon. These winter snows are helping us. These spring rains are really helping our crops. Our rye now is about like so. Last week it was like so, just barely holding on. So nitrogen fixers, getting plant nutrients into the soil. That's the name of the game. This is zone 1, northeast quadrant. I could spend a long time on each one of these. There's a story behind each one. This is zone 1, lateral 4, going clear across the basin. Here's our cover crop plantings. First time water's ever gotten in this area. Look at how she's spreading. And there's another shot. I know I'm out of time, Bob. I'm sorry. This is a different shot, same scene. Our mayordomo lives in this house here, Ames. He's the one with the drone. You can see our tractor tracks. Here's the water slowly spreading. And we worked like dogs last year, dogs, to get this water to move around. And we've got good progress. So zone 1 is where we put a lot of our effort. Zone 2, we needed to mitigate the prairie dogs. Now we've done that. Now we can start moving into zone 2 in the southeast quadrant. and begin planting that. And our contractor and volunteer help and James's tutelage and mine and your brains, we can make this thing work. Zone 3, that's where we're heading to now. Check this out. If this isn't straight from heaven, I don't know what is. Look, and there's some better pictures. This is the area where our hoary cress is. And notice we tried to steer clear of that with our plowing, but all of this has been planted with rye and hairy vetch, right? And the idea behind battling invasives is to compete with them. Yes, we can hand dig and cut and all this other stuff, but we also need to plant things that are going to compete with these invasives. And hoary cress is a nasty white type invasive. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's that blossomy white flower. So here's zone 3. And here's the town's big berm that's chock full of prairie dog holes. And when we flood this out, and that's a battle, you know, the water, all the water in the basin wants to go to the west. It actually wants to go here and then to the maintenance road and then to that guy's house. So we keep a close eye on that. Here's some other beautiful pictures of it though. Zone 3, still in the southwest quadrant. It's a little bit better. And you can see some action happening there. Let's keep going. And another perspective of zone 3. Now, this ditch here is not doing exactly what we want. We're actually creating a problem because we're channeling the water. You don't want to channel water. Water, if that happens, you just create an arroyo, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger. So don't want to be doing that. So we're going to have to move this. This is a labor of love. It's never ending. You have to sit with the land. You have to watch the water. You have to learn from it. You have to solicit Eduardo's and the Vigil family's energy to figure out what they did, because everybody that knew how this worked is dead. So this is a complete reclamation project. Here's another one, same area, better view, close up. I'm going to continue on because I know Robert is going to throw me out. And this is probably my favorite. And then, so you do all this work and you think, shit, nothing's going to happen. We're fighting a losing battle. Why are we doing this in a semi-arid environment? Right? Watch. This is what can happen. Now, you might be impressed by that beautiful scene. And this is a photograph by one of the neighbors, Vicente Lucero. We're in tight relationship with all of our neighbors down here, every one of them. They know me intimately. I know them. I know their quirks. I know what they like and don't like. This is truly a community-minded project. This little herb here is Anil del Muerto, otherwise known as herb of death. Or in the olden days, it was known as ring of death. It got its name from the Spanish, who noticed that whenever they buried someone, this was the very first flower to come up because it loves disturbed soil. It is the plant when everybody starts suffering from allergies, midsummer, late summer, this is the guy that does it. It's Anil del Muerto. Now, it's a beautiful scene, and it's a sign of hope, believe it or not. Paradoxically, ring of death, herb of death, is actually a sign of hope for us because it means the land is starting to regenerate. It's slowly starting to come back. And this picture just knocks my sock off. Let me get that ugly looking thing out of there, that thing, so you can see it. And look at our beautiful mountain there. This is the southern end looking north towards the mountains, obviously. And I wanted to end on this hopeful message only because we can do it. This has been 10 years in the making. It's one piece of garbage at a time, going in my old ditch car, 98 Taurus station wagon. You've seen it, and you will see it, and it's all beat up and muddy looking, but all our tools, everything we need is in there. And now James has a Town of Taos truck. I can't say enough. You know, this, it just calls to me, you guys. And if you want to go down and see it, because I could go on for hours, and I don't want to bore you. I want to be respectful of your time and Bob's, sharing. So what have I forgotten to mention here? We talked about, so the main thing is the whole watershed. We've got to have a holistic approach, plenty of ways to volunteer if you're interested or just curious. If you want to go with me on Pet Waste Patrol to see how nasty that is, it's not. It's kind of fun, meet people. If you want to check out the Rio Fernando Collaborative, whose mission and goal is to restore our Rio Fernando, right? If you're interested in acequia work or helping us run the water, when we have water, which we don't right now, but when we do, we need help. We need eyes on the ground, not necessarily a lot of brawn, but skill. And most especially, as you sit with the basin and contemplate how the soil has been neglected for well over 50 years, we need your guidance. We need your knowledge to help us reclaim this land and return it to the pasture that it is. Bob mentioned the Taos County Cooperative Weed Management Area. That's another way you can volunteer. Bob and I need help on that board. Just people to show up and maybe do a little something. Doesn't have to be a big thing, but we need you. And finally, the bill grant and the collaboration with the contractor as we start to move forward to return this to a state of balance. I did bring by my soil tests and stuff like that for someone smarter than me to look at if you're interested. And gosh, I'm just inviting you down.